Sit down and shut up, Elias. You are a man who spends his days in pajamas, scribbling in a notebook that no one will ever read. Your vocabulary is basic and your mind is so small that you've forgotten what real talent looks like. I am Victoria Sterling, the woman whose novels are sold in every airport, every library, and every bookstore on this planet. I am the voice of a generation. You are just the man who makes my coffee and stays out of the way. One more word of critique on my new manuscript and you can take your pencils and find a new place to sleep. You are lucky I haven't replaced you with a man who actually has a voice. This is the story of how I was made invisible by the woman I loved, how I wrote the bestsellers for a world that didn't know I existed, and the secret betrayal that would bring an empire of vanity crashing down. It is a reminder that the truth is the only story that never changes. I want you to imagine living in a house filled with your own thoughts, but your name is nowhere to be found. Our estate was a sprawling mansion in the hills, a cold, silent library of marble and glass. To the world, Victoria was a literary goddess. She was on the cover of every magazine, from Vogue to The New Yorker. She was the woman who had written the Sterling Saga, a series of books that had moved millions of people to tears, exploring the depths of human suffering and the beauty of sacrifice. But here is the secret Victoria had managed to delete from her own conscience. Victoria Sterling couldn't write a coherent grocery list if her life depended on it. I was the one who wrote every word. I was the one who stayed up until 4 a.m. bleeding my heart onto the pages, creating the characters that the world fell in love with. I did it because she told me, Elias, you're too plain, you're too quiet, your social anxiety makes people uncomfortable. The readers want a glamorous star, not a man who hides in corners. Let me be the face and you be the pen. We are one, Elias. My fame is your legacy. I believed the lie. I lived for her smile. For a decade, I stayed in a small, windowless back room that smelled of ink and old paper, writing in secret while she stood on stages in London and Paris, accepting awards for her deep emotional insight. I was happy to be the ghost because I thought our marriage was the real masterpiece. But pride is a poison that works slowly. Eventually, Victoria didn't just want me to be her secret. She started to believe I was her burden. She began to treat me like a failed hobby she was forced to keep in the house. She stopped seeing me as her husband and started seeing me as a writing machine that she owned. On this particular Tuesday, the literary world was holding its breath. The final vow, the last book in the saga, was set to be released at a massive gala midnight. It was expected to break every sales record in history. I had spent 2 years on this book. I had poured my memories of my late father, my childhood struggles, and my deepest fears into these 500 pages. I had been finishing the final digital edits for the publisher when I noticed something terrifying. Victoria had accessed the file and changed the ending. She had removed the entire theme of redemption and replaced it with a cold, cynical conclusion that favored greed and status. She was trying to modernize it for a movie deal she was secretly negotiating, but she was actually killing the soul of everything I had built. Victoria, I said softly when she walked into my study that evening. She was draped in a silk robe, smelling of expensive perfume and a confidence that bordered on madness. The ending, you changed the message. The characters lose their meaning this way. The readers will know it's a lie. It's hollow. You have to let me change it back before the final upload to the digital distributors. That was when she erupted. She didn't look at the pages. She didn't care about the art. She just saw a ghost questioning a superstar. She mocked me. She called me a mediocre failure. She told me my brain had turned to mush from being in this room too long. As she slammed the door to head to her pre-gala dinner, I stood in the silence of my ink-stained room. I didn't feel anger. I felt a strange, cold clarity. I went to the laundry room to clear my head, a habit I'd developed to feel useful. And that's when I saw it. Her second phone, the one she used for business, was sitting on top of the dryer. It buzzed with a notification. I knew her password. It was Sterling1. When the screen opened, I saw a text thread with Marcus Thorne, her high-powered publisher, the man she told me was just a business partner who likes to talk shop. The first message I saw made my heart stop. It was a photo of Victoria and Marcus in a hotel suite toasting with champagne. The date was from 3 days ago, when she told me she was at a literary retreat to clear her head. The text thread below was even sinister. "The contract for the movie rights is signed, Marcus," Victoria had written. "Elias is a ghost I'm tired of haunting. He's becoming clingy. He actually thinks he has an opinion on the ending now. I've already contacted the private clinic. Once the gala is over tonight and the press tour is announced, I'll claim he's had a mental breakdown from jealousy over my success. I have the forged medical reports ready. I'll have him committed to that facility in the mountains. He has no proof he wrote the books. All the files are in my cloud. He has no money. I'll keep the royalties in the house, and we can finally announce our engagement in the spring." Marcus's reply felt like a physical blow to my chest. "Finally, I'm tired of acting like that pathetic nobody is the man of the house. He's just a tool, Victoria. Once he's locked away, we can hire a real ghostwriter for the next series. See you at the hotel for our victory toast." I sat on the cold floor of the laundry room holding that phone. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was planning to bury my mind in an asylum to steal the rest of my life. She had been using my heart to write about love and loyalty to the world, while she was practicing betrayal and theft in her own home. I thought of my father, a humble schoolteacher who taught me that a story is only as good as the truth it tells. He used to say, "Elias, men can build monuments to their own names, but God only looks at the truth written in the dust. If you build on a lie, the wind will eventually blow your house away." I opened my Bible to the book of Luke. "For nothing is secret that will not be revealed, nor anything hidden that will not be known and come to light." I didn't go to the gala. I didn't call a lawyer. I went back to my study. I realized that Victoria, in her arrogance, had made a massive mistake. She thought because she controlled the brand, she controlled the code. She didn't realize that for 12 years, I had been managing the digital uploads to the global reader database. She thought I was just her typist. I began to work. I had 4 hours before the midnight release. I didn't stop the printing of the physical books. It was too late for that. Instead, I accessed the master metadata of the saga. For 10 years, I had secretly embedded a digital watermark into every chapter of every book. It was a mathematical linguistic signature, a pattern of words that when run through a specific filter, spelled out my name and the dates I wrote them. It was a mercy protocol I built just in case something happened to me. But tonight, I added something new. I created a final chapter reveal. I didn't change the ending she had written. I added an afterword that was programmed to pop up on every digital device, every Kindle, every iPad, every phone, the moment the clock hit 12:01. Then I made a phone call, not to the police, to a man I knew in college, the lead investigative reporter for the Global Literary Gazette. A man who had always suspected that Victoria Sterling's genius was a manufactured lie. "My name is Elias," I said, my voice steady and cold, "and I am giving you the exclusive on how they end." The gala for the final vow was held at the Grand Opera House. It was the event of a decade. Thousands of fans stood outside in the rain, hoping for a glimpse of the Queen of Hearts. Inside, the room was filled with the elite, celebrities, politicians, and billionaires. Victoria stood on a stage decorated to look like a golden library. She was wearing a gown of white silk that cost more than my father's house. Marcus Thorne stood beside her, his hand resting possessively on her waist, looking like the king consort of a literary empire. I stood in the very back of the room, wearing my old corduroy jacket. I was invisible, just as she had trained me to be. The security guards didn't even check my ID. They thought I was part of the catering staff. "Tonight," Victoria boomed into the microphone, her voice dripping with fake emotion, "this book, The Final Vow, is the most personal thing I have ever written. It is a tribute to the power of the human spirit to overcome the shadows." The crowd erupted in applause. Victoria picked up a leather-bound copy of the book. She opened the book, and as she began to read her cynical, cold ending, the giant screens behind her, the ones that were supposed to show beautiful illustrations from the saga, suddenly flickered and turned white. It wasn't an illustration, it was a video. It was a recording from my study. It showed me sitting at the desk writing the very words she was about to read, while Victoria stood over me in the background, screaming that I was a nothing and that I should be grateful she even let me live in her house. And then the screen changed. It showed the text messages between Victoria and Marcus. It showed the photos of them at the hotel. And finally, it showed the forged medical reports to have me committed to the asylum.
The room went deathly silent. The only sound was the clicking of cameras and the gasps of the audience. Victoria's voice trailed off. She turned around and saw the screen. Her face turned from a triumphant red to a ghostly, sickly gray. Marcus tried to shout at the technicians to shut it down, but the system was locked. I had bypassed the local servers and gone straight to the global broadcast feed. I walked forward. The crowd parted like a sea of static. People were holding up their phones, not to take pictures of Victoria, but to read the notification that had just hit every device in the room. The author's afterword was live. I walked right up to the stage. I didn't need a microphone. The silence was so heavy that my voice reached every corner of the hall.
The story doesn't end with a lie, Victoria, I said. You told me to stay in the shadows. You told me I was lucky to be your ghost. But you forgot that a ghost is the only one who knows exactly where the bodies are buried. Victoria fell to her knees. Elias, please, it's not what it looks like. I was just stressed. We can fix this. You can't fix a foundation built on sand, I said. I've released the digital signatures for the entire saga to the national press. Every word you ever claimed as yours now carries the proof that it was stolen from the man you tried to destroy. You aren't the voice of a generation, Victoria. You're just the person who stole the microphone. The fallout was a literary hurricane. Victoria and Marcus were sued for global fraud, embezzlement, and criminal conspiracy. The Sterling Empire collapsed in less than 24 hours. The movie deal was canceled and the bookstores began pulling the saga from their shelves. The FBI raid on the mansion found the mental incapacity papers she had already signed, turning her plot into a criminal case for attempted kidnapping and fraud. The public was outraged. The Queen of Hearts was revealed to be a cold-blooded thief. The billionaire publisher was exposed as a criminal. I stood in the courthouse a month later. Victoria was in a plain orange jumpsuit. She looked small. Without the light of my words to make her shine, she was just a woman who had forgotten how to be human. Elias, she whispered, her eyes pleading through the glass of the visitor's booth. Please, I'll tell them it was a collaboration. I'll give you everything. I'll give you 90% of the royalties. Just don't let them take my name away. I'm nothing without the name. You were nothing with the name, Victoria, because the name was a lie. I'm not taking your name. I'm just taking my soul back. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back at the woman who had tried to bury me. 6 months later, the Sterling mansion was sold. I didn't take a dime of the Sterling money. I donated all the royalties to a foundation for struggling young writers, the ones the world tries to keep invisible, the ones who have stories to tell but no platform to say them. I moved to a small, sun-drenched cottage in the woods near the church where I was raised. I opened my own small publishing house, the Cornerstone Press. I didn't write another Sterling Saga. Instead, I wrote my own book. It was a simple story about a man who found his voice in the silence. It wasn't a bestseller because of a $10 million marketing campaign. It was a bestseller because it was true. It was a masterpiece of the invisible. Sterling is currently serving 7 years in a federal prison. Marcus Thorne is bankrupt and barred from the industry forever. On a quiet Sunday morning, I sat on my porch, writing in a new notebook. The sun was hitting the trees, and for the first time in 12 years, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a man who had finally been found. A young man, a student from the local college, walked up to my gate. He was holding my new book. Are you Elias Vance? He asked, his voice filled with respect. The man who wrote the truth? I smiled and shook his hand. I'm just the man who keeps the ink wet, I said. But remember this, never build a story on the praise of people. Build it on the truth that remains when the lights go out. And never let anyone tell you that being quiet means you have nothing to say. As I looked up at the sky, I realized that the humble had indeed been exalted. For I was no longer an invisible writer. I was a child of the light, and my true story was just beginning. It is a reminder that in marriage and in life, betrayal may win the moment, but truth wins the eternity. May you always find the strength to stand on the rock that never moves. Your truth is your strength.